then we do things that just be like CJ and Zach, like incorporating the things that were good about classical voice and transferring it to every other instance of music. And it's just, the dude he's a really good, like, I see why he's a grad student, you know?
Yeah.
It's crazy. Yeah. It's definitely something I've taken with fruition and have been trying to push forward with my craft, you know?
Definitely. Goddamn, CJ. It's like everything you say, I have to like be like, oh shit, this is some good stuff. No, but that's awesome. You just always been that kind of really good with words kind of person.
It's so funny because, like, a lot of the times, me personally, I just think I'm not, and, like, I can never voice what's going through my head the way I want to, and then everyone's all like, but, it's weird.
Well, if you never voice what's in your head the way you want to, I want to go in your head and actually hear what you're thinking there. Because, like, what comes out is still pretty good. So the questions that I made, I realized that all of these pertain to you, except for one. So like, honestly, I can just go on through it and get it started.
Gotcha.
If that's cool with you.
Yeah.
But wait, quick question though. What celebrities have you met? Or like really inspiring people
Really inspiring.
in the music industry?
Well, when I was a little kid, whenever I was still living with my grandparents, so like the whole story with my grandfather kind of like taking me under his wing when I was 2, and that like trial and error with instruments 2 to 4.
Yeah.
The thing that initiated that was the fact that I would always scream the hell out of songs in the back seat, and it used to annoy the hell out of him. And then eventually he was like, you know, for a 2-year-old, he has pretty decent sense of intonation. Maybe I can do something with it. But the songs I was singing were by this Caribbean artist. I don't remember his last name. I was too young, but his first name was Hunter. And my grandfather was chief of police at the island at the time, and the island is a really well-knit community. So if you have any kind of like notoriety, it's a lot of notoriety.
Yeah.
Like I even went on tour in the islands one time. It was really dope.
What?
Yeah, it was when I was 15.
Oh my.
I'll tell you about that in a second. But yeah,
I need to hear about this.
Yeah, so my grandpa heard like he had to administer some officers to, you know, escort the guy Hunter whenever he came to the island of St. Croix, and he was like, "Hey, my grandson is like always screaming your songs in my backseat. I think it'd be really cool if you go meet him." And I don't remember this at all, but apparently this like famous Caribbean singer just showed up to my grandparents' house one day and was like, "Was this the one singing?" And then I sang like a whole song with him, and they have a video of it. And it's just,
Wait, were you singing with him when you were 2?
Oh I mean,
God.
like gibberish was coming out of my mouth, but I mean the sense of pitch, it was like locked on. It was a really cool experience, at least to see.
Yeah, and you still remember all that too, or like the highlights of it.
The highlights of it.
Yeah.
And he's not big anymore, and he's really kind of humbled himself down. He actually came and visited me again when I was 11, like up here in Texas, and came for Thanksgiving one time, and it was just. He was like, "Hey, I remember I sang with you whenever I was like doing music," and I was like, "What?" and then like everything just kind of locked in after that. But there's him, music wise. I haven't met a lot of famous musicians in person, to be honest with you. A lot of the people that inspire me musically, like musicians, I don't really base it off of like how well is your music known, but how well do you perform your music. And so the most inspiring musicians to me are often the ones that don't get as much notoriety, and the ones who have like who do the craft for the sake of doing the craft, not for the money.
Exactly. They do it for themselves, to better themselves, to more understand their kind of music, rather than to perform just for other people.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and that sense of genuity kind of comes out more than
exactly.
I totally get that.
Yeah.
So I guess that was like that moment when you were 2 was like a really defining moment of music.
One of many.
Yeah,
One of many.
for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, what other ones did you have?
Like moments or people?
Like defining moments that have really like made an impact on your music.
That whole stint where I was a signed artist for a time, like
What? What?
whenever I was when I was 12 years old,
Yeah.
the summer before I went back down to the islands, there's this national convention that's like held every 4 years for the Seventh-day Adventist faith, and that's the faith that my grandmother is in Christianity. And so
Okay.
she took me along, and a lot of times I was just kind of like following the trail, a little duckling all over the place. But the
Yeah.
convention center was right next to the Georgia Dome, and we were staying at this place called the Hyatt Place, which is basically the Roach Motel version of the Hyatt.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
it's like only a couple blocks down, and the Hyatt has like the Peachtree Mall underground right connected to it and stuff. So I'd always either go across the street and then go down into the mall and just hang out with like random people while they were off at the convention, and then meet up with them in the nighttime so I wouldn't get in trouble or
Yeah.
something of that sort. I did a lot of exploring in Atlanta, and God, Atlanta is such a weird vibe of a city because like
Oh yeah. But I mean the music industry is big over there.
it's amazing.
Yeah.
And like the celebrities in Atlanta are not like the celebrities in Hollywood. Like they will be on the streets with you and nobody will get starstruck and bombard them, and it just feels like a big old family. It's really
Yeah.
cool. But one time at the Peachtree Mall, I was chilling. I still remember the place because it was the most bomb Cajun I had ever had in my life to
Oh
this
my
day.
God.
And
I need to write this place down. Where is it?
It's in Peachtree Mall in downtown Atlanta, and I don't remember the name of the Cajun place. Something's telling me Raisin Cajun, but that doesn't sound right.
I'm gonna find it when I go there. I'm gonna find it,
Yeah.
and I'm gonna have me some good ass Cajun.
Yeah, get the Bourbon Street chicken and the mac, and that's
Dude.
honestly all you need, but
Got
put
you.
more in your plate because everything's good there. Yeah, one day I was just kind of chilling, and there were these Hispanic dudes just going at it with the rap battling and stuff, and just kind of joking around. And I was thinking out loud. I thought I said it in my head, but I obviously didn't. And I was like, those bars are kind of weak. And one of them
Oh,
overheard
man.
and was like, "Hey, what'd you say, Holmes?" And I was like, "Oh shit." And then one of them was like, "You think you could do better?" And it's just like, I mean, I rap, maybe. I'm only 12, but okay. I mean, you're getting on a 12-year-old here. And then they're like, face me, and stuff. And so we started going into a little rap battle. We were going back and forth. And, of course, the bars on their side were decent. I won't say weak. They were decent. And, again, like, it's like these grown men going after a 12-year-old.
Yeah.
Well, they probably weren't grown. I was probably just, like, in the rose lens of being a 12-year-old. They're
Yeah,
probably,
exactly,
like, high
just,
schoolers
like-
or something. Yeah, because I was still short. And
feel
then
you.
we started drawing a little bit of a crowd because, it's not every day that you see, a rap battle spawn out of nowhere in a major
Yeah.
mall. And on top of that, a 12-year-old and most likely a high schooler going at
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
And then I remember seeing a face in the crowd that was super, super familiar, and I didn't know why. I found out why later, and
Yeah.
it's a whole part of this thing. But yeah, he stuck out to me in the crowd. Didn't know why. Didn't think much of it, and was just like in the moment. And then he was the only person who wasn't like going like, "Oh my gosh," reacting to everything. He was just kind of calm and observing. I think that's why he stuck
Yeah.
out to me. And then the very last line of the rap battle, I was like, keep in mind I'm 12, so this is gonna sound really childish. And I was
course.
like, "Don't hate the player, hate the game though, because if you're hating on me, you can kiss my black ass. So if you don't understand it, I can put it in Spanish, yo. You best besito mi culo negro." And then everyone was like, "Oh shit,
Oh my
whoa!" And then like that was like it. Once everybody
Yeah.
started screaming, mall cops came and were like, "Hey, you're drawing a crowd. There's no vendor license here. This is low key kind of illegal. Disperse." And then that was kind of like the end of that. And
Yeah.
I went back to the hotel. The next day, my grandmother was like, "Hey, someone that your mom grew up with actually lives in Atlanta, and he wants to show us around." And it was the guy in the crowd. And the reason he was
course.
so familiar was because his pictures were all over my grandma's house. And
Yeah.
she considers him like a son and stuff. And he was like, "Don't I know you from somewhere?" And I'm like, No, you don't. You don't. You
Yeah.
don't. I've never seen you before. Shush. And I'm not trying to get in trouble. And yeah, we didn't really talk. We didn't bring up the whole rapping thing or anything. And then my grandma loves to talk. And eventually she got into how I was starting to get into this hippity hop stuff. And then you fucking jackass. That was his segue into, oh, so you do music. And I was like, you know I do music. You saw me at the fucking mall yesterday. And I was like, yeah, do a little singing and rapping. And he's like, oh, well, spit me a little something. And I knew exactly why he said that. The bars that I was saying were childish rap style kind of things, but it came from a 12-year-old. And of course the Spanish line was not like it takes a little bit of cognition to come up with something like that. And so
I wouldn't be able to come up with that now.
To be honest, I don't know if I could either. I'm not quick with it anymore in the thoughts. And so basically it was like, I've heard you spit some childish shit, let me hear you spit some real shit kind of thing. And rap for him, and he was like, you have a lot of potential for your age and very poetic. And I was like, thank you. And it's like, how would you like to do something with that professionally? And I thought he was pulling my leg for like the longest time. I didn't believe him until the paper was in my hands with a contract ready. He runs a DJing empire. He still runs that DJing empire today. It used to be called Music is Motion, and now it's called Anka Marie, which is that's an island term, but it's an Atlanta-based. It was an Atlanta-based DJing empire that would offer their services to parties, bars, clubs, and stuff like that. And then it became global.
Yeah.
And once it became global, he had enough money to dive into the talent agency side, and so he started a little talent agency branch. And I was like the first guinea pig. I was the first one that he signed in. It's not very successful. It's as successful as a third-party talent agency can be. But yeah, it was kind of the start with me, and signed the paper. It was really overwhelming, and basically I got a fixed amount that I got paid monthly stipend, and then a variable amount on top of that just depended on how much I contributed to the agency. So a lot of times he challenged me to be, oh, there goes a musician, DJ Jimmy Motion, or Jermaine Sherry Jr. He's still a mentor figure to me today, and he actually comes to visit me once a year too. Sometimes you'll see him pop up on my Instagram, and every month he would challenge me to do something new, not only in music, but just to develop my character as a man in general. So for example, whenever I got to high school, 14, 15 years old, this was right before the tour, he was like, hey, you're getting really close to that goal. I think we could piece together a tour, but your bars are starting to get a little bit outgrown. You need to mature your rhymes a little bit more. And so before I got to English 3, and where literary devices were really dissected. In English 1, he was like, I'm going to give you some literary devices I want you to study, and I want you to incorporate them into your lyricism. So I want you to learn alliteration, allusion, what it means to go off of an iambic pentameter and stuff like that. Or iambic pentameter, sorry. And, really develop my vocabulary and be able to express whatever is going on in my head. And then, of course, that's something that, of course, contributed to the music side, but that's also something I can take to develop my own personal well-being too, and incorporate it into my leadership, my grades, which was hella important to both me and him, and stuff like that. And I was signed for 5 years from the age of 12 to 17. It was a 5-year contract, and then after that, I re-signed as a lyricist for 2 more years. And I was basically cut off last year during the summer. And I'm not signed anymore from any regard. I just couldn't keep up with it in my studies anymore. But yeah, I had that little stint. And then when I was 15, I was finally approved to go on tour. And it started in Jacksonville to Tallahassee to Tampa to Miami. And then the islands ending in my home island. It was a really cool experience. And something I'll keep with me forever and ever.
That's crazy. So I've learned a lot about you today. Holy crap!
It's one of those things I try to keep under wraps. And there's my music, there was very, very strict distribution policies on my music, so it's really hard to find online. But people always find the most primitive songs possible and always bring it up as hey, guess what I found? And I was like, God damn it, I was 12. Leave me alone.
Okay, so I'm writing down Find CJ's music stuff.
Oh, God.
People think I'm writing down notes, but it's just the most arbitrary thing. Go to Cajun place. Find CJ's music, and then roast his 12-year-old. No, but that's amazing, man. And like how you keep it like low key. I love like how humbling you still keep yourself after all that.
Yeah.
'Cause-
It wasn't always that way. I'm not gonna lie to you. It's really easy to get like caught up in the limelight and the spotlight, even
Yeah, I
when it's
bet.
on a small scale. But the thing that humbled me down so much from that whole experience was understanding getting signed doesn't mean that you made it. It's only a step in making your career. And
Yeah.
so like, you know, I was like, man, I got a contract, big boy on the block, like all y'all
Of
rapping
course.
at the lunch table, little do y'all know I get paid for this shit, you know. I was like, I even got sponsored by Converse. I used to own
Oh.
a whole crap ton of Converse, and all I had to do was wear their stuff while I performed on stage, and then I would just get the discounts and the customs. And I had this custom black and red one that had like Sea Breezy engraved on the side. Oh my god! I fucking miss it.
No.
But yeah, and that was a dark. Ignore the Sea Breezy part. That was a dark time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that must have still been fun. Like,
Oh yeah. It was a life lesson too. And it honestly like deterred me away from music business for a really long time, just because of like I got exposed to how corrupt it could really be early on, even on
Yeah.
a small scale. And I'm just like, well, if I'm experiencing this much on a small scale, like, let's say I did make it big one day, how corrupt is that industry, you know?
yeah.
And you know, the people who can push through and rally a whole team around them are those who stay humble, remember where they came from, and remember why they do it. And that lesson in its own has just kept me humble and keeping the humility spirit alive.
Mm. That's definitely something to keep in mind, honestly. Me and a friend actually recently made a duo. It was-
Yes,
I know, right?
shit.
It's like him on the guitar and the uke, and he also produces, and then me on the violin.
Oh, good shit.
Honestly, it came out of nowhere, right? We just did it for fun. Like we would go to farmers markets and all that.
Yeah.
But like a couple of events, like we would get talked to by really important people. Like last week, I was this Grammy Award-winning music teacher like came up to us and started talking to us and wanted to jam with us, and we were like, what the heck?
Good shit.
And like,
Wow.
yeah, like getting more connections to big people like Mark Austin, who runs like all the music industry stuff in Houston. But like it's all coming so fast, you know. So I can honestly see like where that that mindset that a lot of pop stars go through can get in the way.
Oh yeah.
Even like when you're just starting off and you're still right here, like it can all still kind of get to your head, you know?
Just like rushes you almost. You know?
Yeah, definitely. But wise words. Honestly, I'll definitely keep that in mind. But I mean, you've already been signed. You've already like done a ton of music stuff. Even though you're not signed right now, do you still think that you'd want to pursue music as a career, like as your main?
Ironically, like switching away from a degree and a career in music has made me want a career in music more.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just like, 'cause, you know, my grandparents always told me that there's a difference between a job and a career,
Mhm.
and you know, a job is something that you wake up for every day to pay the bills and you go home to, but a career is something that you wake up and look forward to every day and come home from.
Yeah.
And so I always try and find an enjoyable career where I can achieve my idea of success. And my idea of success is I feel successful when others around me feel successful. My success comes from other successes and being able to give them the tools and to contribute to that. And music is a really powerful thing. Like, there's 7 letters of the alphabet used
Yeah.
for years and years and ages to come, and it's become a universal language. But now even more so in today's age, it's become a form of medicine too.
Yeah.
Like,
Definitely.
that's fucking powerful, dude.
Yeah.
And I want, like, being, I guess, independent of somebody's preset path to music has made me want to carve my own path even more, you know? Like, the more that I get to fuck around on the piano and just sing what I want to sing, the more I want to share that kind of gift and that kind of passion with others and ignite and spark that passion in others. And maybe not from an educator standpoint like I thought, because the whole education thing, I want to be in a position to where I can be a mentor, and mentors throughout my life have helped shape me into who I am today, and I want to pass down that torch. And I don't feel like I could do that as an educator, but I definitely feel like I could do that as a musician.
I feel that. Well, hashtag same. But as you know, with the music industry in general, you have talked about some hardships, like having things go to your head, things like that, being under a contract. Yeah. Has there been like any other difficulties, setbacks, and struggles, like being in that music industry world that?
It's really easy to forget to take care of yourself because everybody's so demanding of you. You know, like once you have something that society can contribute from, like once you have something that society takes joy in, it almost becomes like a drug and they want more of that. And it can be very, very draining when you have people from all angles wanting that drawn out of you.
Yeah.
But like, in order to serve others around you, you also need to know how to serve yourself and how to keep yourself going. And so, as someone who's so selfless in their actions on a day-to-day basis, it's very easy for me to forget about myself, not only from a musician standpoint, but just life in general. Like, I get so dedicated to helping others, I forget how to take care of myself sometimes. So, like, I think if there's anything that, like, if there's anything at all, that it would be that, you know?
Yeah.
Like, remembering that, hey, the music, at the end of the day, comes from the musician, and the musician needs to be in a healthy and a great mindset so that the music can keep benefiting the people.
Yeah.
Like, in order to be selfless, you also have to be selfish.
That is true. Man, wise words. For real. Jumping off of that, though, you really do have to take care of yourself, for sure. Is there anything outside of music that you do that you find that's really sparked your musical creativity, that's really helped you as a musician?
Outside of music, spark my creativity. Let me think about
or just like help you stay sane through all that musical limelight, you know?
Something I don't do as much as I used to, and I'm really glad that you asked me that, because now I'm realizing it. I used to write a lot of poetry growing up. Because music is a form of expression, and I'm a huge symbolic person, and I always try to find the little things in the big picture. And poetry was my way. Like I said, I struggle with being able to voice my thoughts the way that I wanted to. But whenever I get the time to sit down and take my time and write it on paper, all those words just kind of blossom into the image that I want. And it's something I haven't been doing as much as I used to at all. But that's definitely something. And the next thing is going to sound really corny, but basketball has also been something that really channels just everything that I do, really. Like, basketball has been my escape, because everybody needs that escape.
Yeah, for sure.
Even though music is my number one passion, sometimes you even need to escape from your number one passion to keep it going. And basketball is like, I like to call it a game of life, as cheesy as it is, because it's the thing that saved me from doing something I would have regretted when I was homeless. It's the very thing that kept me motivated to keep my grades up. It was the other thing in the islands that made me have a really big head, but also humbled me down. And like, basketball in its own is a game of rhythm too. So like, the more sound, I've noticed that the more sound I am in my musicianship, the more sound I am in basketball too. So like, if I'm missing a beat with my music, or if I'm not in tune with my inner artist,
then there's no way in hell I'll be able to keep up the dribble moves on the court. Or you know, if I'm being too aggressive or too robotic with the movements, then my shot gets too robotic too, and it's not flowing the way that it should to go straight into the net. And so and basketball is also a language on its own. You know, like for example, if you were to guard somebody with your hands behind your back, in your mind, you might be doing it to remind yourself to keep your feet moving, but to the rest of the basketball world, you are now saying without words, I don't need my hands to guard you. It's an easy miscommunication there.
Yeah.
And so every little thing that you do is being watched and is being communicated differently, and I think that's like a beautiful reflection of what that game could be. And that could be the very thing that makes or breaks, the very thing that unites or separates the people on the court. And so if I can go to the basketball court and have sound rhythm with my dribbling, a very smooth and finesse shot, and can confidently communicate with my teammates without words, then I know that I'll be able to keep a rhythm with my music. I'll be able to stay smooth with the notes, and I'll be able to unite people with my music and the universal language that is music too.
I don't know if you realize this, but that whole basketball thing was such a beautiful metaphor to music. I don't think you were thinking about that, but you were just thinking about basketball, but almost everything you said could have been tied to music. And, basically what you put forward and what people take out of it. Oh my god, that was... Ooh. Oh my god, that was amazing. And also it's important because you won't be able to break my ankles as good as you did last year. Oh man, that's amazing though, for sure. The one thing that I didn't know about you, you mentioned that you were homeless at a time.
Yeah.
I had no idea. Honestly, I'm just really curious. What was the situation?
Yeah. I don't mind sharing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's this thing with my parents. Music has been something that has united everybody in this world to me besides my parents.
Yeah.
And the story behind that, my mom comes from a very not musical family in general. They all love music, but there's no musicians.
Mm-hmm.
Besides my grandfather, but my grandfather's my step-grandfather, technically. So,
Okay.
Yeah, the only musician before I was born in the family was someone who wasn't of blood. And so,
Gotcha.
of course, my mom didn't really have a strong understanding of how important music could be to somebody, and just kind of saw it as, the traditionalistic, it's going to go nowhere, da-da-da-da, that kind of thing. And my dad comes from an extremely musical family. To kind of talk about that, I actually really got this guitar.
Yeah.
Is a centrifugal force. This guitar belonged to my great-great-grandfather, and it gets passed down to the oldest son of the oldest son of the current holder of the guitar, generation after generation after generation. And then my dad was the oldest son, but whenever he got the guitar, he was in a college band, had a terrible experience with it, and it just turned him off to the idea of music altogether. And he's now a corrosion engineer who denounces music in any way, shape, and form.
Wow.
But music runs in the family, so even though it skipped a generation, my oldest sister was a recording artist in the island starting at the age of 22. My oldest brother is still a recording artist in Miami and owns his own fashion shop in downtown Miami.
Wow.
He started at the age of 19 and dropped out of college to keep pursuing it full time, and now has a full career in it. My second sister is a former music teacher turned assistant principal. My grandfather retired from the Navy, the Dominican Navy, to be a music teacher. My second oldest brother is in the National Drum Corps for the island of Dominica. My youngest brother recently started writing music, so he's fallen a victim to the bug too. And the only sibling of mine out of all 7 of us who wasn't musical was Miguel, who lives with his mom in France and jumped into the French Navy. And even still, he followed the whole Navy train with my grandfather.
Yeah.
So, all but one of your 7 kids is musical in some way, shape, or form, even though you have nothing to do with music. And so that just kind of turned him off to the idea of it altogether, and he calls it the curse.
What?
And this guitar, my dad gave it back to my grandfather after that little college stint, and then he gave it to the youngest instead, my Uncle Michael. And then whenever I was 5, he was actually living with my dad at the time, and no, 5.5, 6-ish, whenever I first moved up here from the islands into the Tray and stuff. He knew that my grandfather started teaching me music and stuff, and he gave me the guitar, because even though I wasn't the oldest of my dads, my dad he kind of viewed it as my dad lost that right to the guitar, and he considered me like a son to him, the oldest son. And so the guitar found its way back into the lineage, and been having it ever since. I keep it with me everywhere that I go, and I haven't changed the strings since I've gotten it. And as much as I want to, I'm doing it for a very symbolic reason.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that's kind of my background behind it. Both of my parents have some kind of strong musical force before them, but they just didn't take it in. And so whenever I was raised by my grandparents for the first 5.5, 6 years of my life, because my parents couldn't take care of me financially, like, I just had that bug instilled in me. And
Yeah.
when I came up there, it was just kind of like disheartening to have that discouraged and doubts, you know. But yeah, flash forward to high school. I didn't do the best in high school. The reason for that being was I had this cousin of mine, Tyler. Whenever we were growing up in the Third Ward, you know, everybody talked about going to these big name schools, UT, A&M, Duke, UCLA, Oregon, all of that. And they always talked about continuing a legacy that was already laid out for them. Like, I want to go to A&M because my parents went to A&M to be engineers, and I want to be just like them. Or I want to go to Alabama because my brother played quarterback there, and I want to do exactly what he did the exact same way. And it's just like, where's the innovation behind that? What are you going to leave behind? You know, like, it's a great thing to have, a great thing to be able to continue something, but it's also even greater if you can start something to leave behind so other people can continue it too. You know?
Yeah.
And so me and Tyler were like, all right, nobody's talking about U of H, and it's literally our backyard. We were living in the Tray at the time, and
Yeah.
it was just mind-blowing to us. And so even though the neighborhood had a really negative connotation of what U of H was at the time because of the president and chancellor Jay Goulding, we were like, we're going to go here, and that's where we're going to build our legacy, whatever it may be. And then flash forward to high school, I do a lot of bouncing around in Houston, but on October 20th, 2011, 7:01 p.m., it's like hits me every single time it comes around. He actually passed away and committed suicide. And like, I grew up in a really rough background, so I was used to seeing people come and go left and right, but that was the first time I like lost somebody in my inner circle. And my dad, he was there, but he wasn't there because he traveled a lot, and so he wasn't there to really push me through and support it. My mom is very emotionally detached in general, and she didn't really offer any support either. And I didn't know how to respond, and so I started lashing out, acting up, and I ended up failing 6 of my 7 classes my freshman year. And this is actually going to be kind of ironically relevant since this is a music interview. The thing that kind of saved me from everything was music. The only class I didn't fail was choir. I was in the non-varsity men's choir at the time. And this is also a very big reason why that childish childhood dream became a reality. Is the assistant director at the time, his first year was my first year at the high school, and this guy by the name of Michael Kessler, he sang for Dr. Weber in concert chorale and competed worldwide and all that stuff. And he's even like there's very few names that Dr. Weber remembers throughout the years and refers to as very strong leaders, and he's at the top of the list every time. And he's so humble and like nonchalant that like you find it out piece by piece. Like, he was even one of the original Men of Moors from my a cappella group, and he never even mentioned that. The only reason I found out was because I was researching and I found one of their videos, and he's like, "Oh yeah, you never asked." It's like, well, fuck. But yeah, he knew about the situation with my cousin, and he kind of attributed that to maybe that's why I was acting up. But me being as stubborn as I was, and also I was on the high of about to go on a tour, and I was like, you know, my grades won't let me play basketball, and all I know how to do is make music, so damn sure I'm going to at least do that. And so I would come in every single day, working my ass off, and I didn't notice it at the time because I was very lone wolf and very me at that moment, and very closed off. But that kind of work ethic was really contagious, and it kind of translated to the rest of the group. And to this day, that non-varsity men's group is the only one in my high school's history to be eligible to go to a UIL competition and walk away from with a sweepstakes. And so all that was led by this freshman who came out of nowhere, failed 6 of his 7 classes.
Yeah.
So, of course, my choir director was like, all right, where the hell is the disconnect? And he figured, if music was the thing that was kind of pushing me, we need to find a way to channel that. And also, my manager, DJ Jimmy Motion, just the same way. He's like, this kid is going through a rough time, but music is going strong. Let's find a way to channel that, and hence the literary devices studies and stuff like that.
Yeah.
He convinced the head director to move me up to the varsity group despite the grade policy, and I was all kinds of shook the first day of school sophomore year. I also made up 5 of those 6 classes that summer, and I wasn't allowed to go back home because of those classes, and that was like my wake-up call. Like, Tyler would want me to do better. I need to see my grandparents again, and yeah. But yeah, I walked in hella shook. They pulled me into the practice room, and they're like, look, we understand that you probably feel like you don't need to be here, but we make a deal with you. As long as you keep your grades up, we're going to keep you in this group. And something about me, it's really, really hard for me to bring me to do something for myself, but if it's for the sake of others, that's where I strive for above and beyond, and can do it like second nature. And of course, they were the ones that gave me a second chance. How could I let them down? And so from that time span, this is something that my mom got to see, but my dad did not. I experienced a lot of struggles in high school, but from the time of my freshman year to my senior year, I was able to climb from the bottom percentile back up to top 50. I was able to, I got elected to be choir president as my first officer position ever, which was really overwhelming, but it meant the world to me because I got to give back to the community that built me from the ground up. I got accepted into the same university that all the alum and all of the sons and daughters of alum were building me up from, and finally got a chance to make that childhood dream a reality. And one of the most gratifying things, traditionally, the senior members of the chamber group are the ones who sing the national anthem at the graduation. And my principal heard that I was graduating with no honors and no stoles, and a lot of it was because of my grades. And even though I finished with a 3.2 on a 4.0 scale, there were still a lot of people above that, and so I just fell kind of short of cum laude and all that. But and so she thought it was ridiculous and was like, I want his voice to be the only one heard, and I got to sing the national anthem to a crowd of 4,000 with no honors and no stoles, and I was the only one on that stage with the bare capping gown. And I actually have a picture of it on my phone somewhere. I'll show you later.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and to me, that was the greatest honor I could have worn on that stage ever. Because the only reason I was able to walk across that stage is because people were empowering me through my passion to keep pushing and keep on going to be better, and not end up being just a statistic. And that's great and all, but whenever you're really, really high up, sometimes life has a way of bringing you back down, and this is where the whole homeless thing comes in. The reality check was, even though I made it, I did it, diploma, accepted into college, that's fucking great, but because of my first 1.5-ish years of high school, didn't get any scholarship money except for a $500 stipend for being choir president, and yeah, I was about to go off to a Tier 1 university with $500 to my name, but I also grew up in a background where if you want something, you gotta work for it, so I was just like, well, I don't have the money, and my dad was like, if you want to go to college, you're going to have to get the scholarship money because my money is for our retirement, and I will not be paying for your college, and if it's really an issue, I will send you to military school. So that's the mindset. So I already came to terms with my parents aren't helping me for college. I don't have the money, so let me go get the fucking money. And I ended up working 3 jobs summer before college. I worked at a froyo place that went bankrupt in my second week working there. Worked as a waiter at a sushi restaurant that laid me off 3 weeks after working there for a college seasonal worker. And the one thing that stuck around was American Eagle. And in my first 2 weeks of working there, without a degree, I was able to become a certified stylist, certified jeans expert, and get promoted to assistant manager. And so they treated me like family, and they made sure that I had everything that I needed. And they were just... I love that company to death. They really took care of me. And then July 10th comes around, July 10th, 2015. I'll never forget that date, too. I I wasn't working at American Eagle that day, but I also did a lot of music gigs, a lot of babysitting gigs, a lot of chores and stuff for like a little side money too, because American Eagle, it's a part-time job. It wasn't enough. And so my dad was in town. The way his contract used to work, it would be like 3 months, he'd be off somewhere international working, and then he'd come back for 2 weeks. So he'd only be around for like 8 weeks of the entire year. And then his contract changed my senior year, so he could be there more for my little brother, who's extremely spoiled, by the way. And yeah, so he'd leave for 2 weeks, come back for 2 weeks, that kind of rotation. So he was around a lot more than, you know, my entire high school experience. And whenever he came back one time, he wanted to go out on a date night with my mom out in the town. He was like, hey, I need you to babysit your little brother. And keep in mind, like, he's not he's 11.
Yeah, that's like the worst age.
Yeah, so like, I mean, it's not like he just got like so babied and fed and all that stuff. And
like I would be home by myself at like 10 years old and be fine.
Exactly. At 10 years old, I had to cook for him. Like, oh man, yeah. I'm worried for when he goes out in the real world, because from the looks of it, it hasn't changed. But he's also getting very smart-mouthed and very. It's like that typical spoiled rich kid kind of mentality, and nobody's smacking him across the face for it. He's become a very disrespectful little shit sometimes. And I'm the only one that smacks some sense into him. When I come around, he knows to act a certain kind of way, and he knows. Oh, and if he's around my grandparents do the exact same thing. And if I ever hear him disrespecting about my grandparents, he'll get around to right after. And so, yeah, I'm very, you know, since my parents failed to do the disciplining thing, that's where I step in. Just be like, you can't do this, you can't do that. Have some fucking morals, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm getting sidetracked. I'm sorry. Yeah, so they're like, we need you to babysit your little brother. And I'm just like, well, no, I can't. I'm working today. And my dad's like, you didn't put on your calendar that you were working today. And I was like, well, that's because I'm not working at American Eagle. I have a babysitting gig with the Villarreals. And he's like, well, I don't know that family, so you're not going. And I was like, well, I've known the family for 5 years. I'm a very close family friend of theirs, and I have to pay my tuition for college, so I'm going. And then it just kept going back and forth, and my dad and I are like the peacemakers in the house. So when the two peacemakers are going at it, everyone's just kind of watching, and nobody knows how the hell to stop or anything. It just got really nasty. Eventually, Kat came out the bag. I'll spare you all the details. It was basically just started with the babysitting gig, then the Kat came out the bag, and it started about me being a disgrace and him never being there, and then it ended with him saying, if you think you're so grown and can handle your own, there's no reason for you to be in my house, and I want you out. And I was like, okay, that's perfectly fine, because watch, I'm leaving. This house is going to fall apart without me anyways. And I was right, but it was one of my biggest regrets because of how right I was.
Yeah.
So yeah, got kicked out that night. Took all my stuff, packed it in the car, and then in the same night, I also got in an accident off of 2351 in the Gulf Freeway, and got my driver's side smashed. So, come waking up the morning of July 11th, I was homeless, living in a rental car, and the $500 to my name that was supposed to be going to school is now going to a Geico deductible. Because I wasn't the at-fault driver, but you still got to pay that deductible to get your claim. And yeah, so in 2 days, my orientation on July 13th and July 14th is about to happen. I have zero money to my name trying to go to this Tier 1 university, and that is by far the absolute lowest I've ever been in my life. And the thing that saved me was basketball, believe it or not. I was very unmotivated to do anything after that, and I was lost. And so when I'm lost, what do? I go and escape, and I went to go play basketball. There's this guy, I don't remember his first name because I called him Mr. Zhang out of respect, but I will never ever forget this man. This was in the Clear Lake area. It was a court that I went to very, very frequently, but I had never seen him before. And then, we were shooting on separate sides, and then these kids come along like, hey, let's play a game of 21, and we all get on the same court. And this man is like 38 years old, and is just dominating these boys, and I'm just like, what is going on? And then, like, also me being me, I'm like, they just have to keep a body in front of him. If he's driving, he probably doesn't have a shot. And so eventually I was like, all right, let me go guard him. And remember the disrespect thing that I was telling you about with the hands? But
Yeah.
That's I learned. So I was like, well, since he's driving to the rim, have you ever heard that saying that when you exchange fists with somebody, you can often tell their whole life story?
Nope, but I do now.
It's an old martial arts saying, and it was very true in this regard. This was the toughest game of 21 I've ever played because it was just so mentally draining. And so I was like, if he's driving, all I have to do is cut him off with my body. I don't even need my hands. And it's like, well, if I got to cut him off with my body, he's quick. I got to keep my feet moving behind the back.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's like, oh, so you're a cocky one. And so he tries driving in, block him off with the chest. Tries going left, block him off with the shoulder. Right again, block him off with the body. And then he backs up to the three and it's like, oh, you're a smart one. And then he just shoots a three in my face like it's fucking nothing. And I'm just like, well, I thought I had him figured out. But I also play the same kind of mind games too because I'm ambidextrous. And coaches have this really old teachings where they always tell you to watch the first move of your defender because whatever move they do first is what they're most comfortable with. So if someone's dribbling with their left hand up the court and then they drive it in left and finish with the left, they got to be left-handed kind of thing. If you're ambidextrous, that fucks up that whole thing.
Yeah.
So I was taught to shoot with my right, so I always drive with my left as my first move in every single game. Fun fact, if you ever play me, just cut me off at the left and you'll have a free basket that won't be scored, just so you know. And yeah, so I drove it in with the left, finished, and he's like, you're a lefty. This is going to be a lot of fun. And then, I hit my free throws and everything, get the ball back, and then he forces me right because he's like, well, if he's left, let me not force him left, force him to his weak side. Little does he know the weak side is actually my strong side, and I just tricked yes. And so he did exactly that. I hit the shot. And then he's like, and then he saw the hand that I went with, and was like, the minute I put the shot up, he's like, God damn it, you're right-handed. and then when the shot fell down, he was like, no, you're ambidextrous. So am I. We're gonna have fun. And I was like, what? Yeah. So that was basically the whole game for the most part, just kind of like one-upping each other. And he ended up beating me 21-19, so literally by one bucket. And I'm still salty about it today. I'm not even gonna sugarcoat that, but nonetheless, that kind of established that whole respect thing, and we sat down and talked after it, and we're just talking. And then he was like, so when are you heading home? And I pointed to the car and I'm like, it's right there. And he's like, what? And but then he told me this story, and he also gave me this life advice that I actually live by, and I tell it to almost everybody that is under my wing for any kind of mentoring kind of position. So all of my probationary members with the fraternity hear it. All of the O-team leaders have heard me say it at least once and stuff like that. But basically, he had this friend who went to my rival high school, Clear Lake, supposed to be the biggest basketball player out of that area in a very long time. Had a whole bunch of D1 offers left and right. And then his coach was like, look, you're going to be getting a lot of offers. Don't get caught up in the limelight. Go to a school because they have the resources to make you successful, not for the fan base. And he took that advice with fruition and turned down all of those offers and went to a community college instead to save money and pursue electrical engineering. Now, the problem with that, he came from a very traditionalistic Asian household, and his parents were like, you turned down all of this money for school, we disown you. And so he went to community college, virtually homeless. He lived in a restaurant and worked as a busboy to pay rent and pay for meals. And at his community college, he was able to graduate with an associate in electrical engineering with a 4.0 GPA. Then he transferred to a 4-year institution, was a walk-on for the basketball team to get scholarship money to pay for it, and graduated from there with a 4.0 in electrical engineering, also with a bachelor's in science. And the week before his graduation, I don't know how true this story is or how exact this is the story he told me, but very, very inspirational. There's a customer who was very, very rude to him and kind of told him that he would amount to nothing as a busboy. And then 2 years later, after his graduation, he gets very established in his field. He's the CEO of his own housing circuitry firm, and guess who needs housing work done? And so he refused to serve him, used it as a lesson to you never know who you're talking to. Whenever you're talking to that busboy in the restaurant, it can be the next person who runs the world. Everybody starts from somewhere. And then he kind of opened up and was like, that was my friend, that was me. The Clear Lake alum, go Falcons. And I was like, fuck you, dude. But the whole reason he told me that story was to kind of give me this advice. And he told me, life is like a movie. You have the remote in your hands, and you have the power to press play, pause, stop. Sometimes you can even press rewind and fast forward. At the end of the day, it's in your hands. But with that being said, sometimes your movie is going to have to come to a stop. And in those times, it's very important to remember that you haven't seen the end of your credits. So sometimes it's better to press pause and let your movie buffer, and then press play later as opposed to pressing stop. And with that, he was like, so I want you to press pause right now. I want you to go to your orientation in 2 days, because unlike other people who are in your position, you were accepted and you have an opportunity to make something of yourself. Don't worry about the costs right now. Figure it out later. Just take that step. And the next time I see you on this court, I want to hear about everything you did at the University of Houston. And that was my saving grace, by far. And so I have yet to see him. I've gone back to that court every year, and I haven't seen him yet. Still searching for him. But the next 2 days, I went to my orientation. Malia, actually,
Malia Ali.
Yeah, she. I didn't have a blanket or a pillow for obvious reasons, and something that I know she still remembers, and I will keep with me forever and ever. She really made me feel at home when she gave me her pillow and blanket for the night to use.
Oh wait, I remember that picture, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
God, I love her. Love her to death.
Yeah.
She's a character, but she always means well. It's great.
Oh yeah.
And so orientation was another breath of fresh air. It was just like things on things on things. And then for the next 2.5 weeks of that summer, it was the same thing every day. I'd wake up, go work a morning to mid-afternoon shift at American Eagle as either assistant manager or shift lead, run inventory. And then in the afternoon, I'd de-stress, escape with some basketball. I still had my membership at the 24-hour rec, and then I'd go shower in the nighttime, park in the Baybrook Mall parking lot, fall asleep, wake up, and do the exact same thing the next day. Did that for 2.5 weeks straight, pissed off my managers with how many hours I was putting in, but I got to move in with CV1 with enough money to pay off my fall semester and start somewhere. And 2.5 years later, I'm still around, so something's going right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's kind of like where the whole homeless thing happened. But it's, even though I was at a disadvantage, my grandmother always told me there's never an end. It's just a bend, and it was really hard to keep sight of that. But keeping sight of that keeps me going. And I've been fortunate to have a roof over my head ever since. Of course, O-Team did give me 2 summers of that, but every other way, I've been able to make ends meet. So, yeah.
Wow. Oh my God, you've definitely lived a life, man.
A little too much. Yeah, I always tell
but
people the reason I'm so childish now is because I didn't have a chance earlier.
Yeah. No, but it keeps you woke though, for sure. And
sure.
I feel like that helps you a lot with your music and all that, especially your lyricism too. Because when you were 12, you were already spitting bars, but having so much life experience at this young age has probably really fostered that.
Big time.
Definitely. Speaking of that, what's the process that you go through whenever you make music? Like whenever you're making songs or whenever you're composing, producing, just screwing around on the piano?
Yeah, it's very organic in a sense.
Yeah.
Because it's a process without a process. Of course, there's times where I really have to structure it, especially when I'm on a time crunch or something.
Yeah.
And oftentimes I never feel like those are my best projects because I never get the chance to let it happen.
Yeah.
And something I've been slowly discovering about myself over time is that I have an instinct to seek out music. And so if the music is already seeked out for me, it's really hard for me to invest into it. So my process is letting the music take its course. I can show you an example actually.
Sure.
So there's a jazz progression that everybody and their mama knows now because I play it so much. But so yeah,
I've heard you play that.
Yeah. It was actually it was a Tori Kelly song I learned while I was homeless.
Which one?
Paper Hearts.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, Pictures memories I'm living through for now. Trying to remember all the good times. My life was cutting through so loud. Memories are playing in my dull mind. I hate this part. Paper hearts. And I'll hold a piece of yours. Don't think I would just forget about it. But yeah, it really kept me at bay while I was going through that whole 2 weeks and a half struggle. So yeah, that's that progression.
Yeah.
Whenever I was still dating Deja, the thing that started that whole relationship, I actually wrote a song for her and performed it at a fraternity recital.
Oh, snap.
Yeah. It was one of those, CJ getting tired of the olden days things.
Yeah.
We have this serenade song that was written in 1972 that we do every time we serenade the women of the men of the fraternity. And I was like, it was written in 1972. This recital is supposed to bring in our potential probationary members. Let me just write my own damn serenade.
Yeah.
And trying to go off of Symphonia's idea of a serenade was one of those things, like, it was already seeped out. I was struggling with it. And so a lot of times whenever I need to focus, I always just play this progression. And then one day I was like really messing it up. And then I just got frustrated, and whenever I get frustrated about playing a progression, I always play it like fast to get it in my head.
Yeah.
And then I was like, I got really stir crazy in the practice room, and I was like, I wonder how fast I can play that now. And then on the fourth one, I messed up and accidentally went to this chord, and I was like, wait a minute.
You missed something. Yeah.
Yeah, I missed something, but like, even though I missed something, I was like, that sounded like it came to bay though. It sounded like a cadence, like it resolved.
Yeah.
And so I froze my hands here, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna remember this chord. I'm gonna do this again, and I'm gonna add a little something and have a little fun. And so. And add a little bit of church behind it, and then a little bit of embellishment. Skeleton of the song was made, and I was like, I haven't written a song in a long time. I'm not a signed lyricist anymore. This is where my serenade can start. And then I was in the practice room with Asia at the time, and I always find it easier to work with people around me when I'm making music, because then like if they enjoy it, it gives me motivation to keep giving them something to enjoy. And so me being a jazz musician at heart, because my grandfather was a jazz musician, of course I was scatting the melody to figure it out.
Yeah.
And then I finally found like something that worked. And then I started thinking logistics, like, oh, if I'm going to do this, then I need to find a showgirl, because there's probably not going to be a lot of girls at a show, like a recital for a fraternity to recruit. I was wrong about that. I know that now. I was just initiated at the time. But yeah, I was like, there's probably not going to be any girls there. Let me just ask somebody to be there as a safety net. And of course, Asia was in the room at the time, and I was like, would you be my showgirl? And she's like, I don't like being the center of attention, da-da-da-da. And I was like, all right, I'm not going to force you to do anything that you don't want to do. And then I started doing the scat thing, and then I started trying to put words to it, and I couldn't find the words. But on the last one, I was able to, let me be your symphonian man. And then I had a title. The minute I had a title, I just had to shape everything around the symphonian man. But then I was like, well, how the hell am I going to describe the symphonian man? Because the thing with the symphonian man, there's a shit ton of brothers across the entire nation, and there's not one archetype for the symphonian man. And then I was like, okay, let me not make it about the symphonian man, and let me make it about this symphonian man. And so then I made like this whole, I basically roasted myself. I was like, all right, if I'm making it about me, I need to make it cute, I need to make it corny, I just need to be a nigga and roast myself.
And so then it turned into, my name's Carlton, but I cannot do the dance. I break ankles, but my shots don't stand a chance. I got the keys, they are literally in my hands. Let me be your symphonian man. Now I don't know you, but you're looking fine tonight. I wanna know your name, bet it sounds real nice. Now be the perfect to my fifth and harmonize. Let me be your symphonian man. And then I had a chorus.
Yeah.
And then when it came to just writing the rest of the piece, I always use my verse as an introduction of what's to come. And I always use the second verse of my songs as a way to dial it back. And, you know, like, it's an introduction to the hype. After the hype, dial it back to just really get sentimental with the audience. And once the sentimental stuff is, like, really, like, settled in, kick it back up for the hype, and then you bring it back for a little bridge and like mellow it out again, and you finish strong. And a lot of my songs follow that kind of dynamic. And so, yeah, from that point, just started with the intro. Allow me to be. So I always, since the original Serenade starts really slow,
Yeah.
I would kind of throw everybody off with this and just be like, oh shit, he's doing another. And then out of nowhere, myself, my name's CJ, and making music is my game. And all I wanna know is if you can vibe with me into the night. Look, TBH, I just saw you cross the way. Allow me to try to brighten up your day. And all I wanna know is if you can stay with me, then we'll be alright. Now let's take it slow. Baby, let's not rush that tempo, yeah. And if you like to go, and I'll show you what a symphonia knows. Yeah, my name's Carlton, but I cannot do the dance. I break ankles, but my shots don't stand a chance. I got the keys, they are literally in my hands. Let me be your symphonian man. Now I don't know you, but you're looking fine tonight. I wanna know your name, bet it sounds real nice. Now be the perfect to my fifth and harmonize. Let me be your symphonian man. Whoa, yeah. Whoa. I can see that you're looking kind of red. My black shirt can complement your blushing skin. We can ride to the golden sun and then don the colors of a symphonian fam. Call me Orpheus and be my Eurydice. I go to hell and back, baby, so we can be another extraordinary you and me. Take my hand and we'll see. Now, let's take it slow. Show you what this symphonia knows. Yeah, my name's Carlton and I cannot do the dance. I break ankles, but my shots don't stand a chance. I got the keys, they are literally in my hands. Let me be your symphonian man. Now I don't know you, but you're looking fine tonight. I wanna know your name, that sounds real nice. Now I've been talking for a while, just styling my flow. So let me sing to you real quick with my piano. Let's see if I can still do this. Kind of rough. And then I laughed, and then I'm like, hey, that was nice, right? And then Deja was also sitting right here. Deja ended up being my showgirl.
Mm-hmm.
And then, my name's Carlton, but I cannot do the dance. I break ankles, but my shots don't stand a chance. I got the keys, they're literally in my hands. Let me be your symphonian man. Now I don't know you, but you're looking fine tonight.
asking from you is just a chance. What is your name? Deja. Deja, let me be your symphonian man. Of course, you know, this doesn't hold out the chord as long as it does, but it just like flourishes. And so, like, I always try and make my music an extension of me or a character that I have interacted with. And so this is like probably the purest example of an extension of me. And then anytime I perform somebody else's music, I always put myself in the shoes of the artist and try and figure out how would they convey this, what experience in their life are they tying this to, and how can I create the same emotion that they put into the song.
Yeah.
And then last but not least, I always make sure that whatever my track is, whether it's me on the piano or me on the guitar or like an actual produced instrumental that I've made or a friend of mine has made, I always make the lyrics and the music coincide with each other. So like a good example of that would be whenever I go, let's take it slow, I slow it down, and then whenever I say let's not rush the tempo, I rush the tempo before I say let's not rush the tempo, so that there's a new tempo established, sensing a new relationship that's already going. And maybe let's not rush that tempo, yeah. And then like I make my voice rush it, even though I keep this consistent. So even though I want to keep pushing things forward, at the end of the day, I have to move to the beat of the life, the rhythm of the rhythm of the beat.
Yeah.
And so I always, like, every song I treat it like there's a big picture, and it's just a matter of painting each stroke to create that big picture. Each stroke has its own individual color, but when you put all those colors together, you can get a rainbow, you know?
Yeah. Wow. That's almost euphoric in a sense.
It really, yeah, gosh. Yeah, whenever you get that genuine experience of just making music and not doing it as a chore, it's euphoric is the best word to summarize that, honestly.
Yeah, definitely. Holy crap! Wow. So, out of all my interviews that I've done so far, I've only done 3, so this doesn't say much. This is honestly the best one and the one that I feel like I got the most out of.
Thank you.
Thank you. I learned a lot about you. I already had like this much respect for you, right? But like now my respect cannot be described by my hands. I need like Michael Jordan's long ass arms.
Gosh.
No, that was amazing, man. Thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it. I'm gonna have the most fun making a narrative out of your piece. So yeah, I really appreciate it. Any last words about what you got going on, where people can find you, about, or honestly just about anything?
I'm actually thinking about restarting everything musically again. Oh, I got an audition for The Voice in May.
What?
Yeah. But like the audition process for The Voice is really strenuous. It's like there's the first round, you have to do something a cappella, and then if they like you, you get a callback and you have to do something accompanied, and if they like you there, then you get the blind audition on TV. And so, long story short, I posted a snap. I can show you this snap actually.
Yeah, dude. Oh my god.
Yeah, so you know how like you can post stuff on the Houston story and stuff, and
Yeah,
like you can
yeah.
actually like look at like Houston stories all around. So, and you know how like those sometimes get featured.
Mm-hmm.
There was one day where Houston got featured, and I was on the story singing, and
Oh my god. Boy.
Alright, so the story behind this, my friends were like, wait a minute. Because, like, you know, I posted a lot of stuff on about O-Team over the summer. Like,
Yeah,
wait,
yeah.
O-Team's done. You can sing. Why don't you post stuff about you singing? And I'm like, when have y'all ever seen me do that, first off? But, yeah. And then there was like 5 of my friends that basically teamed up and ganged up and just blew up my DMs with post something.
Yeah.
And so I was like, all right, fine, I'll post something. And I posted a really sped up version of it on my story. And I was like, all right, leave me alone. And they're like, please slow that down and post it again and put it on the Houston story. Like, just do it. And then they did the gang up thing again. I was like, all right, fine, leave me alone.
You have to.
Yeah, and I did it. And then it started getting featured and stuff. And, there's this one guy who found my Snapchat username, added me, and was like, hey, you sounded really good on the Houston story. And I was like, oh, hey, thanks, dude, appreciate it. And I was just kind of messing around. And he's like, have you ever heard of The Voice? And I was like, shook first, second, duh. But then like the third, like in actuality, I was like, yeah, I'm actually a really big fan of the show. And he was like, well, they have auditions in May in Austin. And if you like, on the 13th, I can put you in for a spot. And I was like, you're bullshitting me. There's no fucking way. And he's like, no, just make an artist account on The Voice. Give me your artist number and I'll put it in for you. And I was just like, he worked with NBC and he did.
Wow.
And I'm locked in for a spot. There's by no means a guarantee, but it's a guarantee at an opportunity. So yeah, and this was the freaking snap. It's not my best work at all, but...
gotta rep that.
Gotta rep it. It was on the Houston story. Gotta rep it. But yeah.
Dude, that was sick. I love that.
Yeah, and so I'm still like, it's still like, whoa to me, And so I've just kind of been like occasionally just prepping for that, seeing what songs I can sing, what can showcase, how can I sell it the most.
Yeah.
So I mean, music-wise, I've got that going, but I mean, I might start something up. I would just say slide in the handles of like social media. I think it's _singer20 on Twitter. Or I'll text it to you if you remind me.
Not a singer, the
singer.
Nice.
I'm trying to shave the whole like that boy _miracle in me.
Yes, that's something that I need to do too.
Yeah.
Like, I need to change my Instagram handle like
I've been
as
trying
soon as possible.
I don't even know how to change it on Instagram. Like, I got Twitter figured out. I'm still trying to figure out Instagram. Cause
No,
I'm
my friend actually changed his. He's supposed to show me how to do it. I'll let you know whenever I change mine. Because when people go on my Instagram, like, wanted to hear violent stuff, and then they see Anthony B twerking. It's not gonna be good.
I feel that. Yeah, I'll probably be hopping on some music stuff pretty soon. I've had a lot of friends who are like jumping into it too.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll keep you up to date if anything like that happens.
Yeah, dude, for sure. Like, holy shit. Like, you're doing it big. Like,
Trying.
Yeah. Fucking proud of you.
Thanks, man. Oh man.
But yeah, I guess let me end it off. Oh my god.
Oh wow.
So I guess that ends our interview session. It's your boy Tony Moore in the morning. It's your boy That Miracle. We outie in 3, 2, 0.